My name is Sabrina Rosner and I'm the curator of Field Trip. Field Trip brings together 6 contemporary artists to create site-specific works in the bushland of Big Sea in the Wollemi National Park. The exhibition Field Trip takes the notion of a scientific exploration of a site. The artists have been visiting Big Sea for the last 12 months and have explored the property, its history, its physical and its cultural landscape, and then created works which will be displayed in the environment. The works in Field Trip are going to be presented during the World Heritage Week and are going to be installed around the bush for people to explore and enjoy.
My name's Sarah Breen Lovett. I work as a curator, an artist and academic. I'm mainly interested in how we understand ourselves within the world through the built and natural environments. The way I explore this is through moving image, installation and participatory performance. The work I'm doing here is based at a site, part of the site called the Three Angophoras, where there's 3 Angophora trees that have grown in very close proximity to one another. This resonated with me straight away because I'd previously worked with the idea that groups of trees growing in close proximity to one another in groves, for example, are a place of sacredness, and throughout time in various cultures have been used for different ceremonies and I guess building relationships between people and the natural environment. I'm going to be doing an installation there which builds on my own Celtic heritage and the tradition of tying rags to trees as a way of exchange and acknowledgement of, I guess, how nature can make you feel at peace and relaxed, and then the rag is something that you give back as an intentional piece to the tree rather than just zapping them of all their peaceful energy. It's basically a wrapping of the 3 trees to create an empty space in between. I guess it questions how can we talk about relationships to place when we're not necessarily from somewhere. How can we feel that we have a connection with somewhere if we're not there all the time? But it also talks about our right to, I guess, enter a space that other people perceive as sacred.
My name's Ona. I'm a photographic artist based in the Blue Mountains and I primarily shoot portraits. So for a field trip I've decided to shoot a series of botanical images rather than portraits, and I noticed that there was a similarity in the feel of the images to my portraits. I was sort of interested in looking at why that was and how to create an exhibition of images without a human connection, which is how I usually work. So the original idea was that we are coming to Big Sea on field trips, and it's an artist residency, and the idea of artist residencies is that people take themselves away from home, away from what they usually do, into a space, and they kind of become a bit internal in order to create something and get a new perspective from that. So I sort of had this idea to flip that a little bit. So why not take a little bit of Big Sea and give Big Sea a little field trip away, to take cuttings from plants around and take them, I photograph in the studio at home, take them to my studio and see how they respond and see what happens and see what's created on both sides, like what happens behind the camera in the studio when they're kind of in a contracted space rather than out in the open, and see what happens as a result from where they were taken as well.
I'm an artist based in the Blue Mountains. I work primarily in ceramics, but I use various other mediums alongside my ceramics work, such as natural materials, found objects. I'm mostly interested in the human relationship with the natural world and the way that we move between man-made and natural environments, and the sort of tenuous experience that can be for us as humans. So I've chosen a site where there is a turpentine tree that's been burnt out on the inside, so that most of the heartwood is gone, but it's still growing. So some of the shapes and forms in the tree are sort of reminiscent of maybe windows or archways in a cathedral, so I imagine that's why it's been called that. There's a lot of texture and a lot of sort of patterns and that tell the stories of what it's been through. I'm really interested in sort of those parts of the tree, the actual physical aspects of the tree, some of the negative spaces that you can see. For this project, I'll be creating an installation of sculptural ceramic forms. But it's really a very intuitive and raw sort of approach I'm taking to making this work. So being in the presence of the tree and thinking about the environment that the tree is in also. And the idea of it being a cathedral tree, very much sort of relating that to the way that, people who are religious will worship at a church or at a cathedral.
My name is Jacqueline Spedding. I'm an artist living in the Blue Mountains. My practice is sculpture and installation with a background in ceramics. When Yuri showed us around the site, I was drawn to that particular place because of the stump of the turpentine tree. The stump reminded me of the clearing that is happening along the M4 at the moment for WestConnex. But more than that, it brought to mind images of the clearing of trees around Sydney during colonisation. It was sawn, we know it was felled in the 1860s because it was felled by hand. I knew immediately that would have been used in wharves and warehouses in Sydney because it's a hardwood, it's very dense, it's very slow growing, and therefore it's water resistant. I began thinking about the salt water of the harbour, the sweat, the tears of loss of landscape and home that were experienced by Indigenous people without any shadow of a doubt. And then linking that back into the current experience of what it's like to see a landscape denuded of its trees that I'm familiar with, and how disorientating that is. But also how disorienting for timber getters coming from overseas to come into an environment that was so unfamiliar and having to make their way in that environment. And it can be a very hostile landscape, as we know. This bush is not soft and gentle, it's harsh, it's hot, it's prickly. Looking at that stump made me think of the history of that place and how it came to be, and the fact that it marks a particular time in our history. It's a signifier not just of the loss of that majestic tree, but it's also a signifier of the loss of culture for our Indigenous people. It's a signifier of the loss of displacement for the people who came to cut them down. They came to a very foreign place. And it's also a marker for us coming to that place. It kind of, history collapses and expands at the same time when we acknowledge all of the things that have happened in and around that place, and then we're coming to them again. So it's like a concertinaed moment that brings us into the past and into the present at the same time. There's a story that it echoes in my family history where my grandfather on my father's side went into the cedar forest behind Lismore and felled a tree and brought it out to Lismore, had it milled and then he made it into a bedroom suite for my grandmother for a wedding present. When I inherited the dressing table, I have quite an ambivalent relationship to that piece of furniture because it is a signifier of love and union and family, but in a way that is very distant from me.